Hello, chess friends, and welcome back to Jozarov chess channel. I'm finally back. If you're asking yourself the question, what happened to me for the last 2 weeks, the answer is simple. I was on my vacation. I spent beautiful time with my family on the Croatian seaside, but now I'm back with new energy, of course, and we're starting immediately with a brutal game. So we're starting now my comeback with a beautiful game played by Stockfish 15 against another top engine, Black Marlin. The game was played on the bonus tournament of the TCEC season 23. You can follow the tournament on the TCEC official website. I'll show you the link to the website in the description below, so you can check it out. You can also follow some other games. You can also follow some other games played by Stockfish 15. They're really beautiful, and Stockfish, as usual, is in the lead of the super event and will probably win a new tournament. So let's see now the game. Stockfish 15 versus Black Marlin. It was, I think, really a beautiful special game. In one particular moment we'll have 3 queens on the board where Stockfish has to find really some tactical solutions, and believe me or not, this was one of the best games that I've seen in my life. So let's see now the game. Stockfish opened with the move d4. We have knight to f6 by the Black Marlin. We have c4, e6, knight to f3, the anti-nimzo or counter nimzo-indian variation. We have here d5. The game transposes now into the Queen's Gambit declined. Knight to c3, 3 knights variation of the Queen's Gambit declined, and now we have the move d takes c4, which becomes now the Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit declined. And recently on my YouTube chess channel we have followed this beautiful opening for both sides. You can also check it out, the Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit declined. Here we had really some great studies. Here's the link. You can also check it out if you're interested maybe in some other lines and some other possibilities here for both sides. Here after move d takes c4 you can do many things. So you can play the move e3 or e4. You can also play queen to a4 with the move queen takes c4. What I don't like about this continuation queen to a4, queen to c4 is that you play with the same piece twice in the opening stage, which you are trying to avoid basically. So that's why the main line of the Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit decline is actually an aggressive method with the move e4. The problem a little bit about this move e4 is that you get pinned with the move bishop to b4, and many of you are maybe getting these positions many times and you don't know what to do. What you should do here from white's perspective is just to follow with bishop to c4. Simply play this gambit line. I guarantee you will have fun here to play the game from white's perspective. Black on the other side has to defend this position. Black has to prove now the point because black will eventually take out the pawn with the move knight to e4. Now you cannot take because of the pin, and now white simple castle. So this is not something that went wrong, I think, here for white. This is a must-know line here in the Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit decline. So as I said, if you're interested in this opening more, please check out also my series here on my YouTube chess channel. So here kingside castling was played by Stockfish 15. So now again white can be challenged in this way. Black can play here the move knight to f6 or can play knight takes c3. What I don't like about this move knight to f6 is this particular line, queen to a4, then you have to play knight to c6, and now eventually knight to e5 will happen. Now there is a little bit of an overload, but still this is a line that has been played many times in chess history, so also playable for both sides. So but in the continuation after move kingside castling here, this Black Marlin engine took knight takes c3. Here we have b takes c3, and now Black Marlin retreats here to d6. So also solution is bishop to e7, or you could also play here the move bishop to c3. Now it will be probably followed up with rook to b1 with bishop to g5. So I've explained also this particular line on my YouTube chess channel. If your opponent takes out this pawn also on c3, in my opinion this is something that black should try to avoid, because the activity that white gets for this loss to pawns is, I think, sometimes simply too much to handle for black. You see white builds really a beautiful attacking formation. The bishop is active, the knight is active, this bishop is active. This bishop still needs to play at least once or twice in order to get back in shape. Meanwhile white will develop even the queen. So as I said, you should try it out. You should also maybe see your results in this particular one. So here in the continuation after move b takes c3, as we said, the Black Marlin engine retreated to d6. In the continuation we have rook to e1. The idea is clear, I think, here for white. White wants to first of all build a central grip around the square e5, knight to e5 or rook to e5 eventually will happen. Then maybe to maneuver one of these pieces towards the king side, and also play bishop to d3 or bishop to b3, bishop to c2, build again an attacking formation with both of this and both of these bishops, with the rook on the e file, with the queen that can always come into the game here, maybe to g4. So the loss of a pawn is not so important, I think, because white has, I think, as I said, a beautiful compensation, a beautiful piece activity. The problem for black is, I think, when black takes the pawn like this, that black has a lack of defenders in front of the king. So when black castles, like the black Marlin engine did here, kingside castle was played by black, you see now you have a lack of defenders. You don't have minor piece defenders in front of the king, so you need really to get your pieces fast back into the defense. If you don't do that, you can get smashed really by this beautiful piece activity of white. So we have here bishop to b3. This is an interesting line that Stockfish shows here. Bishop to c2, queen to d3 is going to happen, so trying immediately sort of a checkmate threat around the square h7. So knight to d7. So see, the black Marlin engine is maneuvering the knight towards f6, where it's at least a good defensive piece. We have bishop to c2 and now b6. So queen to d3 and now g6. This is a must move, I think, here for black. The problem is now, if you play, for instance, knight to f6 in this particular line, then you get this one, bishop to g5, and look at this, you have to play something like g6 because the threat is obvious. Bishop to f6 followed up with queen takes h7, so you have to be careful. So now black would be forced to play the move g6. This wasn't played in the game, but I was really curious what would happen if the knight comes on f6. After move g6, it's very tricky here. You see, you get the move knight to e5, and this is really weird because bishop to e7, look at this, can be met with knight to c6. So now in the continuation we can play queen to f3. So these are really serious threats what white is preparing here. So I would not love to play now this game anymore from black's perspective. So this is not good. So that's why after move queen to d3, the must move is now the move g6. The problem, I think, again, by this move, it's that you have it again weakened a little bit the pawn structure in front of the king. Okay, maybe you have defended this position now for a while, but look at this now black is facing many dark square problems here in front of the king. So now white can, of course, immediately use this squares in order to attack further the position. So here in the continuation, Stockfish plays an interesting line, knight to e5. The problem is now, if you play knight takes e5, this is not good because you get this one, d takes e5. You have to step back with your bishop to c5. White doesn't want to take, of course, obviously, because white is down a pawn. If the queens are off the board, then the game is simply too simplified. So that's why white would be forced now to play the move queen to f3. And you see now, from this point on, I think white is taking over, although down a pawn, but black is facing many tactical problems. You have to play, first of all, rook to b8, getting out of this attack, and now white continues the pressure with bishop to h6. You could play maybe here bishop to b7, but now white stays simply on dark squares, is attacking here this squares all over the board. Rook to e8, but look at this rook is coming into the game, and I think black is facing, as I said, too many tactical problems. You can maybe escape to e7, bishop to g5, queen to f8, but the pieces are simply too passive. Now bishop to a4, so white can play on this so-called simple threat rule, just threatening the position a little bit. And now you see c6, rook to d7, so white will simply build a beautiful attacking formation again, and the black pieces are simply too passive all over the board. So this is not working. So after move knight to e5, Stockfish found a beautiful way how to cement this position around the square. This is a very important piece now, and the threat is also knight to c6. But from this square, white is also attacking the f7 square, but also the g6 square. So it's a very nice centralizing move here by Stockfish 15. So here bishop to b7, not allowing knight to c6. We have bishop to h6, rook to e8, and now queen to g3. Here Stockfish played a really nice provocative move. Queen to g3 is here very dangerous, because in the near future what white could do is maybe h4 h5, then h takes g6, and then bishop to g6, maybe f takes g6, queen to g6. So maybe white could build sort of an attacking formation around the square g6 where the pressure could be present. So this is now really hard to handle here from black's perspective. After move queen to g3, the problem for black is that this move f6 is not working. You would love, of course, to play the move. You would love, of course, to get rid of the knight and also threaten the queen. But the problem is now this tactical shot. Bishop to g6. If you play, of course, h takes g6, then queen to g6. Wherever you go, you get checkmated. If you go here to h8, queen to g7. If you go here, no, you cannot get, of course, to the queen side. So it's game over. So if you try after move bishop to g6, if you try maybe to escape here to h8 immediately, then the problem is now the f7 square. You get knight to f7. King to g8, and now bishop to h7. The problem is now this is a double check. No one escapes from a double check. The bishop cannot take the queen, of course, immediately. You have to take out now the knight, and here again queen to g7 is the checkmate. So if you take, of course, the bishop, again queen to g7 is going to happen. So it's game over for black. So this is not working. You see the move f6 is not working, so it keeps the knight on e5 a little bit further in the center of the board, which is very important for white in order to stay in great attacking shape. So here queen to g3, bishop to f8. Here the black Marlin engine is trying to simplify the game by trading off the bishops. We have bishop to g5 attacking the queen. Again, if f6 happens, then knight takes d7 is the beautiful move. I think that is much better now for white. If you try maybe here queen to d7, then we'll simply take out here the pawn on f6. Now the e6 pawn is a huge weakness. If you try something like f takes g5, then knight to f8, rook to f8, and look at this. This pawn is also hanging. In the meantime, white will build again a beautiful battery on the e file. We'll also get the queen on the e file. So this is a weak pawn, in my opinion, a much better and continuation for white. So after move bishop to g5, again you see the problem is now you cannot play the move f6. So that's why here bishop to e7, bishop to h6, knight takes e5, and now d takes e5. So nothing dramatically changed. Again the rook will come on the d file. Again white can build this idea rook to pardon me, h4 h5, maybe some tactical threats around the square g6. So it's now really weird position for black. Black has to now defend his position like a line. So that's why Black Marlin played an interesting defensive idea. I really liked this idea. The Black Marlin engine played now the move b5. In the beginning, it doesn't seem that it's a special move, but look at this now. After move rook to d1, black can play the move bishop to d5, and the cool part about the move b5 is that now you cannot play the move c4 in order to kick away the bishop from the d file and threaten further the queen. So really nice defensive setup. So the Black Marlin engine found really good way how to defend its position, at least for now. So in the continuation we have now rook to d4, and this is the usual Stockfish 15 rook lift. Whenever you see that Stockfish is building a rook lift, you can guess what happens. It's really now a tactical destruction. The idea is clear. We want to play here from white's perspective, rook to g4, and again some ideas of h4 h5, maybe bishop to g6, rook to g6, simply crushing the position around this very important square, and then with the support of the bishop on h6 maybe to deliver checkmate. So we have now c5, kicking away the rook, rook to g4, bishop to f8, bishop to f4, bishop to g7, and now rook to h4. So now this is a beautiful rook. Now the rook is also threatening here the square h7. The problem is now here for black that you cannot actually continue here the pressure on the queen side. You cannot play some moves like rook to b8. I've analyzed at home this line. It seemed to me in the beginning like a logical move that you have to, here from black's perspective, maybe make some kind of an attack on the queen side. But the problem is now this attack by black is simply too slow. White will play queen to h3, will threaten here the square h7, and if you play now something like h5, look at this, the queen gets again to g3, and now, for instance, if you try to push this position further here on the queen side, this is now the actual tactical threat, the move rook to h5, and this would be, I think, a stunning move. This again wasn't played in the game, but this was very important to realize what would actually happen if black tries to maybe maneuver the position a little bit towards the queen side more, where we have to say black has the advantage on the queen side, but doesn't have time to do something, because rook to h5, look at this, g takes h5, bishop to h6 is winning the game. There's no good way to defend his position. Rook king to f8, now you have to step back, queen to g7 is going to happen. We'll simply continue the pressure here on dark. So that's not good. So here in the continuation, after move rook to h4, that's why queen to a5. Here the black Marlin engine realized that maybe it's time to get this pawn, maybe to attack also further here the bishop on c2. In the continuation, we have queen to h3 and now f5 here by the black Marlin engine. If you try here something like queen takes a2, if you try to take out this pawn immediately, then you get rook to h7. If you try maybe here to take out the bishop, this wasn't again played in the game, but again, very important line here to recognize. Then you get this one, rook to g7 is also a threat. It's winning the game immediately here for white. Sorry. So let's go to this moment, rook to h7. As we said, if you try queen to a2, rook takes h7, queen to c2, but now we take out this one, it comes with a check, you have to take. Now bishop comes here on a very important square, and now we're threatening the move bishop to f6. If you try maybe to get the queen into the game, rook, queen to h6, first the check, king to g8, and now bishop to f6 is winning the game. Even if you sacrifice the queen, there's no escape from the checkmate here on g7, so the game is over. So really stunning tactic it would be. So that's why after move queen to h3, you could maybe try again this move h5, but we have seen this problem. As we said, we play queen to g3, king to f8. You can maybe step out of this attack, but look at this, bishop to g5 is going to happen. You can maybe take out also this pawn. Now bishop to b1, now maybe the queen gets here to a5, but look at this, now bishop to f6, again sneaking in here on dark squares. You can even sacrifice, I think, some material here around the square g6. So again, this attacking formation, I think, is simply too much to handle here for black. So this is not working. So that's why after move queen to h3, here black tried to move f5. Stockfish takes here finally the pawn on h7, and now a rook to e7 is sort of a must move in order to at least get a new defender here on the 7th rank. So we have bishop to g5 attacking rook, rook to c7, and now rook to h4, getting the pieces back into the attack. Now the strat is of course bishop to f6, maybe getting rid of the bishop, then rook to h6, and maybe also take out the pawn on g6. So we have rook to f8, we have queen to d3, queen to g3, trying maybe bishop to f6, attacking further also the pawn on g6. So we have queen takes a2. Finally, here the black Marlin engine dared to take out this pawn, but again, it seems to me that this attack on the queen side is simply too slow. Meanwhile, something is happening here on the king side. Meanwhile, white is attacking the position. White has here some attacking opportunities. In the continuation, we have bishop to d1. Stockfish maneuvers now the piece towards the king side, where it again can be used as an attacking piece. And now comes one of the critical moments of this game. Here, the black Marlin engine played f4, and in the beginning it seemed to me, okay, what is going on? Why is black is sacrificing just a pawn like this? But the problem, I think, is here, as we said, the square g6. And if you play even something like king to f7, if you try maybe to protect this position like this, the tactical problem is this move, bishop to e2. If you try something like c4, then bishop to f6. That's the actual goal, because look at this, after bishop to f6, e takes f6 comes with a direct attack against the rook. That's now the huge tactical problem. And also we have this problem, rook to h7. So again, black is helpless here. Black will get this rook for sure. So you have to step back with the rook, and now the rook is coming into the game. So it's again game over. So this is not working. After move bishop to d1, we see that the king cannot escape from this attack immediately. You have to prepare sort of your defense. You have to get more defenders into the game. So that's why f4 at least locking now this diagonal for a while, but it's a bad move, I have to say. You lost the pawn again. Now Stockfish simply took bishop to f4, queen to b1, and now queen to e3, trying now this idea, bishop to h6, maybe queen to h6, and then deliver some dangerous checks here on the h file. So we have now after move queen to a3, a5, Now black is trying this attack on the queen side, but we have said it's simply too slow. We have h3 and now c4, simply attacking now the position here on the queen side, trying to get something out of this 3 versus 1 situation, out of this pawn majority. Even if you try here b4, then as we said, the actual goal is this one: bishop to h6, maybe c4, takes, and now bishop to f3 comes with a beautiful attack against the queen. This bishop will be taken, then we can sneak in with the queen again, trying some checkmate. So this is, in my opinion, a much better position now for white. So as we said, after move h3 here, the black Marlin engine tried c4. We have bishop to f3, again this motif, the queen is hanging, the queen has to go here to d3, but now Stockfish plays a beautiful tactical shot, bishop to d5. The problem is now, if you try to simplify the game by trading off the queens, this is not working because you get bishop to e6, intermediate check. Now you have to cover with one of these rooks, will take out, and then also the queen. White is continuing the game with the next rook, so it's then game over for black. So this is not working. So after move bishop to d5, the Marlin engine has now to take the bishop with bishop to d5, queen takes d5. We have queen to g3, again attacking the weak square on g6. We have now queen to d3 and now f3. Stockfish is not allowing some further trades of pieces. This is a very important move. If you simplify the game too much, as we said, black has extra material, black has some more pawns on the board, so black will win the game. So f3, very important move. So b4 played by black Marlin. We have rook to e4, we have b3. If you try king to f7 here, maybe to defend this pawn, then you get this one, rook to g4, and there's not a good way anymore to defend its position. So rook to e4, b3, we have queen to g6, now b2 here by black Marlin, but now comes a beautiful and stunning move here by Stockfish 15. Stockfish plays now king to h2, and from this point on you face one of the best, really best and immortal tactical sequences of all times. King to h2 is a beautiful escape move because, okay, here black Marlin promoted to a new queen, and it seems so that something went wrong here for white. Black has 2 queens on the board, but look at this now, how Stockfish prepared this tactical sequence. Queen to h7, we have king to f7, and now bishop to h6. Now there is this threat around the square g7. You have to escape here with king to e8. Now we have queen to g6, and now rook to f7. One of these rooks has to be included into the attack, but now bishop to g7, and the threat is also now rook to h8. Seems really dangerous where this other rook is coming into the game, then also this rook is hanging. So in the continuation we have rook to e7. Here black Marlin is trying to create sort of an escape route for the king, but now comes the stunning tactic, and maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. It's really hard to see, but try to think out of the box sort of, because this is really stunning what Stockfish did here. Take your time, it's really monstrous and immortal tactic. Okay. Okay, if you saw this one, you're really great, because look at this. Rook to d4 was the stunning tactic by Stockfish 15, sacrificing even this other queen. But look at what happens if you try queen to g6, then you get this one, rook to h8, and you can maybe just include the rook in the defense, but rook to f8, and this is a beautiful checkmate, so it's not working. If you try something like queen to e3, if you're trying to get out of this mess again, rook to h8 is going to happen, so nothing dramatically changed. So rook to d4, stunning tactic. It comes with the attack against the queen. Here we have queen to d4, but now comes a very important move, rook to h8. The intermediate check is very important because it's not time simply to take out now the queen, because your queen is also hanging. So that's why rook to h8, the king has to take a step back here to d7, but now queen to b1. The queen is hanging here. The problem is now, after this one, queen to f4, it seemed to me again that something went wrong here for Stockfish, because now the bishop is hanging. Stockfish escaped here to h1, but now king to c6 had to be played, because look at this. If you try now a rook takes g7, you get this beautiful checkmate here with queen to b7. So black doesn't have time to take out the bishop here on g7, has to play now the move king to c6, and now Stockfish simply escaped with the bishop on f6, and the bishop is cemented here on this very important square. And now the king, we have to say, it is a little bit naked here by the attack, by this attacks of the rook, by the attack of the queen. This is really bad position for black. Although black is up the exchange, black has a rook for the bishop, but if this position gets cleared, if you could just maybe imagine this position maybe without this pawn, and maybe without this pawn, so with the bishop and these 3 pawns against maybe a rook or something, then it's winning, because white has simply too much material for the rook, has a bishop and 3 pawns for the rook, so it would be of course a completely winning endgame here for white. So that's why after move bishop to f6 here, in my opinion, already a winning position here for Stockfish 15. So here rook to b7, so attacking the queen to a1, trying now a very annoying check here on a4. Here in the continuation we have rook to b5, so the Marlin engine is trying to escape from this attack. We have now rook to h4, attacking the queen. Very nice move. In the continuation, black Marlin played rook to queen to d2, but even if you try some ideas of rook to f4, okay, rook to f4, this could be maybe an interesting endgame with 2 rooks against the queen, but still I think this has to be winning for white, especially because of these pawns that could march here on the king side. Maybe something like queen to a4 could be continuation of whites now, maybe king to b4, maybe queen to a3, now getting the queen here, taking out this one, pushing this pawn, pushing maybe this pawn. The problem I think here for black is that the king is naked. The black king is always vulnerable to some checks by white, so really not a good position here for black. So that's why after move rook to h4, rook takes f6 doesn't make sense immediately. That's why the Marlin engine tried to escape queen to d2. Now the queen comes here on a4, and now the problem is this pawn is hanging. From this point on, Stockfish is really taking over. So king to b6, queen takes c4, queen to d5. The Marlin engine is trying again to simplify the game by trading off the queens, but this should be only considered, this move queen to d5, maybe without these 2 pawns. If you take now too early, I think then this passer could be a huge problem for white. So if this position would be the same without the pawn on c3, maybe without the pawn on a5, then I think we could trade off the queens and just push our pawns on the king side. But with this passer, it would be, I think, a risky choice. So that's why it's not good. Stockfish tried queen to c8, tries now to deliver some checks here on the b file. We have a rook to c5, queen to e8, queen to d7, again a check against the perpetuals. Here Marlin tried to force maybe a 3-time perpetual, but didn't happen. Here after move queen to b7, we have queen to g8, attacking now the rook. We have rook to c3, and now rook to d4, simply including now this other rook into the game, maybe here to d8, and maybe here then afterwards to b8. So rook to c6, queen to e8, king to a7, king to h2. We have rook to c7, bishop to d8, attacking now the rook. The queen created this pin against the queen here on the 8th rank. We have a queen to g8, g6, attacking now the rook. So now there are no threats on the 8th rank, so that's why rook to c8, and now a very important check here, rook to d7, king to a8, and now this beautiful pinning idea here by Stockfish. If you take, of course, then it's checkmate here with rook to queen to c6. You can only cover with the queen, but still you get checkmated on b7. So after move queen to e4, here the Marlin engine tried queen to b5. We have a rook to d1, trying now to maybe get the a file as an attacking chance, attacking also the pawn on a5. We have queen to c4. Again, the Marlin engine tried to simplify the game by trading off the queens. Rook to d4. We have queen to c2, and now bishop to a5. As we said, now when this pawn is off the board, then it makes sense to go into this forced endgame now, because after queen to e4, rook to e4, this is now a different story. Black doesn't have any more the passer, and now white has, I think, a completely winning endgame here. So in the continuation, we have rook to c2, we have h4, rook to b2, king to h3, rook to c2, but now Stockfish simply escapes from this attack. This is a check, but nothing special. The king can escape here to g4, rook to b8. Now Marlin is trying to get maybe the g b-file as an attacking chance. We have king to g5, rook to g8, king to f6. The Marlin engine took, but Stockfish first of all protects this pawn. In the continuation we have rook to g8, and now after king to e6, Stockfish creates now a nice two connected pass pawns. Even if you lose this pawn, these two pawns are marking, so they are unstoppable. We have now king to e8, we have king to f7, and this was a really beautiful move by Stockfish, because after king to f7, the problem is now you cannot take the pawn on e4, e5, because you get this one, bishop to c7. Look at this, both of these rooks are lined up on the dark square diagonal. Now we have to play maybe something like, I don't know, rook to c5, but you get this one, rook to a4, and now this rook is hanging, so it's game over. So even if you manage to, I don't know, play something like this, we'll simply take bishop to e5, rook to e5, but now Stockfish has two extra pawns, and this is also winning. So after move king to f7, the Marlin engine was desperate, sort of played rook to h4, rook to h4, rook to e5 in this position. The Marlin engine resigned. So this is not completely winning. The king is too far away. We have a bishop and a pawn and the rook against the rook, so this is also a theoretical win. As we said, the Marlin engine simply resigned. So great game, I think, by Stockfish 15. The tactical sequence was really wild when three queens were on the board. Really interesting ideas of the Vienna game, of the Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit Decline. Please check it out. It's sort of an opening that could happen to you many times, especially if you're playing the Queen's Gambit Decline, sort of the three knights variation with the white pieces. Many times black is doing this particular line, so you should be really familiar with some opportunities for both sides. As I said, if you want to see more about this opening, here's the link of our Queen's Gambit Decline Vienna variation series, and if you want to see also some other great games played by Stockfish and some other top engines, check out my commented chess games played by computer series. Here's also the link, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.